You've got 3 hours, maybe less. That's how long it'll take for your local Walmart to go from fully stocked to completely empty. No eggs, no water, no baby formula, no medicine. And once that happens, they won't just panic. They'll come for you. Because here's the truth. Over 42 million Americans rely on food stamps. 70% of our produce is imported. And the diesel fuel that powers every delivery truck in the country, it's at its lowest reserve level in over 40 years. You're standing inside a fragile system, and one trigger, whether it's an outage, a delay, or a headline, will collapse it overnight. You think shelves can't go bare in the U.S.? Ask anyone who's lived through a hurricane, a cyber attack, or a lockdown. It doesn't take weeks. It doesn't even take days. It happens in hours. And when it does, the unprepared won't wait in line. They'll break through your door. 10. The diesel collapse. That's been quietly bleeding America's lifeline. Nobody's talking about it on the evening news, but diesel fuel, the one thing that keeps everything from your Amazon package to your grocery delivery running, is vanishing faster than anyone expected. And no, this isn't some distant risk floating around in a what-if scenario. This is happening right now under your feet. As of fall 2025, U.S. diesel inventories are hovering at multi-decade lows, according to data from the Energy Information Administration, EIA, with some regions having less than 25 days of supply at current consumption rates. But here's what they're not telling you. When diesel runs low, it doesn't just hit truckers. It paralyzes farms, factories, emergency services, food transport, even the military. Nearly 96% of all big rigs in the United States run on diesel. Take that out, and within 48 to 72 hours, your Walmart shelves go from looking normal to stripped bare. Now add this. New EPA emissions regulations are choking supply chains even harder. Smaller trucking fleets, the ones that deliver to rural communities, mom-and-pop grocers, and yes, even some Walmarts, are being forced to shut down or sell off because they can't afford the cost of compliant engines. Oh, and guess what? The 2024-2025 Ukrainian grain shortfalls triggered an insane spike in global diesel demand as Europe started stockpiling alternatives to Russian energy. Translation: America now competes with Europe and Asia for every last drop of diesel. And if you think the government's Strategic Petroleum Reserve, SPR, can save us, think again. It's already been drained to its lowest level since 1983, just 346 million barrels left, down from 638 million in 2020. That's not even enough to last us a month in a crisis. If there's a freeze in the Midwest or a cyber attack on a major refinery, and remember there have already been 14 accidental refinery fires in the last 18 months, diesel will be gone overnight. And when the trucks stop, you don't get a warning, you get chaos. 9. The cold storage crisis. That will rot your food before you can even buy it. You probably haven't given a single thought to America's cold storage infrastructure, but that ignorance will cost people their lives. You see, the entire U.S. food system depends on refrigerated warehouses, chilled semi-trailers, and frozen distribution hubs that keep meat, dairy, vaccines, insulin, baby formula, even fresh produce stable. And right now, it's all breaking down. According to the Global Cold Chain Alliance, America is short by over 100 million square feet of refrigerated warehouse space, an infrastructure hole that's only growing. Walmart, Kroger, Costco, even Dollar General are struggling to keep perishables in safe condition, especially in rural and high-demand urban zones where power grids are fragile. Here's the terrifying part. Over 70% of cold storage units in the U.S. were built before 1990, meaning they're running on outdated tech, rusting compressors, and legacy power systems that can't handle today's load. Worse, we're heading into another El Niño winter, and the storms are projected to be 50% more extreme than normal. That means more blackouts. In fact, in Texas alone, there have been over 200 grid emergencies in 2025 so far. So what happens when the grid blinks out for just 6 hours? Hundreds of thousands of pounds of frozen meat go bad. Milk spoils. Entire freezer aisles are written off as biohazards, and Walmart's not insured to cover all that. They dump it. You don't get a refund. You get nothing. And it gets worse. America's aging trucking fleet, remember they rely on diesel-powered refrigerated trailers, is collapsing under fuel costs and driver shortages, meaning even if food is frozen at point A, it's likely thawed and spoiled before reaching point B. The cold chain is crumbling. And no one's going to tell you the turkey in aisle 7 has been sitting warm for 18 hours. You'll eat it. Then you'll get sick. Then you'll wonder why hospitals are packed again. 8. The disappearing farmers and the cornfield graveyard of America. While everyone's distracted with TikTok bans and political circuses, the heart of America, its farmland, is being choked out. In the past 12 months, nearly 42,000 U.S. farms have shut down, according to USDA reports. That's not just sad, that's existential. Family farms are being crushed by rising fertilizer costs, insane insurance premiums, brutal weather events, and most of all, land buyouts by billion-dollar investment firms. BlackRock, Bill Gates, and foreign entities from China and Saudi Arabia now own over 35 million acres of U.S. farmland. Let that sink in. That's land that used to feed you, now being leased back to Americans at a profit or left fallow. Corn, the backbone of American food, fuel, and feed, is in sharp decline. 2025 projections show a 12% year-over-year drop in yields due to droughts in Nebraska, pests in Iowa, and floods in Missouri. Meanwhile, soy and wheat futures have spiked over 40%, and it's not because demand's up. It's because supply is in freefall. Fewer farms mean fewer crops. Fewer crops mean more imports. And imports mean dependency on a system already strained by war, climate, and geopolitics. By the time it hits your grocery store, that bag of frozen mixed vegetables has been shipped through 3 countries, handled by 5 subcontractors, and stored in 4 different warehouses, all of them vulnerable to price spikes, fuel shortages, and logistics delays. In other words, your food is already a week old and 3 times more expensive before you even touch it. Now consider this. The average age of an American farmer is 58 years old, and fewer than 10% of them have successors lined up. This is generational collapse. Walmart relies on those farmers for milk, lettuce, strawberries, and 6,000 other products. And when the fields go silent, so do the shelves. You'll walk in and see the empty bins. You'll ask where the onions are. There won't be anyone left to answer. 7. The snap bomb that's about to detonate in every grocery aisle. This next one? It's not just economic. It's explosive. As of Q3 2025, over 41 million Americans rely on SNAP benefits, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. That's more than the entire population of California. But what most people don't know is that 90% of SNAP dollars get spent within the first 2 weeks of the month. That means if benefits are delayed, even by a single day, you've got millions of hungry, desperate people flooding stores at the exact same time and zero backup inventory to cover it. Now, here's where it gets horrifying. Due to recent federal budget standoffs and Treasury constraints, the USDA has issued multiple warnings that SNAP disbursement dates could shift or even be reduced temporarily. That's code for, we're about to run out of money. Walmart is the largest SNAP retailer in the country with billions in annual revenue tied to EBT transactions. They literally cannot function without low-income Americans flooding their stores every month. But if those payments get cut or even paused, Walmart goes empty, not slowly, not gradually, but in under 3 hours, according to internal supplier warnings leaked earlier this year. Food riots, they've already happened. In 2022, a brief EBT system outage in Louisiana caused mobs to strip local Walmarts clean. Police had to shut down roads. That was just one state. Now imagine it on a national scale. And the government's own numbers show a 40% increase in food insecurity since 2023, with 1 in 4 U.S. children now skipping meals weekly. The USDA isn't fixing this. They're slashing benefits while quietly shifting millions into online-only options that don't work in food deserts. The system is about to break. And when it does, it won't be about who forgot to prepare. It'll be about who you trust not to claw through your front door when their benefits vanish and the last rotisserie chicken gets grabbed by someone else's kid. You think that's dramatic? Wait until you hear what's at number 6. 6. The workforce exodus. That's gutted the American supply chain. 6 out of 10 Americans have no idea where their food comes from, let alone who brings it to the store. But you're about to find out why that ignorance has become deadly. The U.S. is facing a historic collapse in its blue-collar labor force, and it's not just because of COVID, wages, or politics. Since 2020, the supply chain workforce, from long-haul truckers to warehouse packers to grocery shelf stockers, has been quietly bleeding out. In 2025, there are now over 3.1 million fewer workers in the logistics and food distribution sectors than in 2019, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That's not a slowdown. That's a hemorrhage. Here's what the talking heads won't say. This isn't just retirement. It's systemic burnout. Thousands of Walmart warehouse workers walked off the job in 2024 after backbreaking conditions, forced overtime, and wage compression. Truckers. The average age is now over 54, and 70% of new commercial driver's license (CDL) applicants never complete training. Why? Because it costs over $7,000 to get certified, and there's no promise of work that covers the cost. Meanwhile, automation, which was supposed to replace human labor, has only created slower fulfillment times due to buggy AI, mislabeling, and catastrophic order routing failures. Walmart recently piloted an automated fulfillment center in Illinois. Within 3 months, it was reporting 30% higher error rates than its human-run equivalent. And don't forget the retail workers. Walmart has quietly cut front-end staff by nearly 60% over the past 2 years, replacing them with self-checkout kiosks that routinely break, fail to scan items, or falsely flag theft. Customers get frustrated. Staff get harassed. Morale plummets. And now, stores are operating with half the personnel they had pre-pandemic, even though demand has skyrocketed. So when you walk in and see pallets sitting in the middle of the floor, boxes unopened, or produce rotting in back rooms, it's not a mistake. It's abandonment. And when the last few workers walk out, they won't leave a note. They'll just be gone. And you'll be left in a store with no food, no help, and no one coming to restock anything. 5. The urban crime spiral. That's already turned Walmarts into no-go zones. It's not a theory. It's not alarmism. It's already happening. Right now, in major cities across the United States, Walmart is quietly closing dozens of stores in places like Chicago, Portland, Oakland, Atlanta, and Washington, D.C. Why? Not because of bad business, because of crime. Retail. Theft has become so rampant and local governments so unwilling to prosecute it that entire Walmarts are being abandoned. In 2024 alone, Walmart shuttered 23 locations due to what they officially called underperformance, but leaked reports revealed loss rates as high as $10 million per store per year, just in theft. Let that sink in. A single Walmart was losing the equivalent of 27,000 items per day. Theft rings are no longer petty criminals. They're organized, coordinated, and in some cases tied to international resellers. Groups hit stores with walkie-talkies, getaway drivers, and duffel bags, not stealing snacks, but hundreds of boxes of over-the-counter drugs, baby formula, razors, electronics, and high-end vitamins. And when local law enforcement does respond, they're either understaffed or instructed not to engage unless violence occurs. So now stores are fighting back, not by protecting customers, but by shutting their doors. Self-checkout lanes are being closed at night. Alcohol and OTC meds are locked behind bulletproof glass, and security guards, many are unarmed, underpaid, and quitting in record numbers. Here's the real nightmare. When stores close, entire neighborhoods lose access to food. In South Chicago, when a Walmart closed in 2024, 70,000 residents were left with no full-service grocery store within 4 miles. That's not just inconvenience. That's a food desert. And when that happens, people don't drive farther. They get desperate. Thefts turn into robberies into assaults. And when the food trucks stop showing up, because drivers refuse to enter high-risk areas, the neighborhoods collapse inward. If you think the chaos will stay over there, you're dreaming. It always spreads. And your clean suburban Walmart? It's only one power outage, one budget cut, or one riot away from being boarded up with plywood and spray paint, just like the others. 4. The currency decay. That's making food more expensive by the hour. Let's talk about your dollar, the one in your wallet, your paycheck, your bank account. It's being drained, eroded, and weaponized in ways that 99% of Americans don't understand until it's too late. You've heard about inflation, sure, but what you haven't heard is how the U.S. dollar is no longer the anchor of global trade, and that one shift has started a chain reaction that's already impacting your grocery bill. In April 2025, the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, plus a dozen new members, officially launched a gold-backed settlement currency, and countries from Indonesia to Saudi Arabia are already trading oil and grain in it. That means fewer nations need dollars, which means less demand for the dollar. which means the dollar weakens. And every time it does, the price of imports goes up instantly. Walmart's global supply chain depends on imports. Nearly 70% of its food inventory touches foreign soil before reaching your cart, from strawberries grown in Mexico to fish farmed in Vietnam to frozen peas packed in China. So when the dollar loses 5% of its global value, which it has just since February, your food prices jump 10%, and they will again, and again, and again. Eggs are up 30% year over year. Bread is up 18%. Rice, a pantry staple for 4 billion people, is now seeing price spikes of over 45% in some American cities, thanks to Asian export restrictions and a weak greenback. But it's not just food. Packaging, transportation, refrigeration, all of it runs on imports and petroleum, both of which get more expensive as the dollar slides. So the cost is passed to you, but your wages aren't rising to meet it. Walmart's own reports show the average basket of groceries has increased by 24% since 2022. And for lower-income families, that's the difference between survival and hunger. And here's the part nobody wants to admit. When a currency collapses, it doesn't do it slowly. It dies in stages, then all at once. By the time you realize your dollar buys half what it did a year ago, the shelves will already be empty, because those who saw it coming bought everything first. 3. The border collapse. That's already rewriting the rules of survival. There's something happening at the southern edge of America, and it's not just immigration, it's destabilization. In 2025 alone, over 3.2 million people have crossed the U.S. southern border illegally, according to CBP reports, the highest number in recorded history. But what no one on the evening news will tell you is that this isn't about border towns anymore. It's about every single county in America. Because these aren't just border crossers looking for work. Increasingly, they're part of something bigger, darker, and far more organized. The Department of Homeland Security has quietly admitted that over 26,000 people on the terror watch list were intercepted since 2021. That's not a handful. That's an invasion. And while you're told this is all about humanitarian crisis, here's what's actually happening. Entire cartels have moved their operations into U.S. territory. They're not hiding. They're in suburbs, in warehouses, in storage units. Fentanyl distribution has tripled since 2022, and the DEA now estimates that 7 out of every 10 counterfeit pills sold on American streets contains a lethal dose. This isn't about drugs anymore. It's economic warfare. Because what happens when the communities absorbing these millions of migrants run out of food, water, shelter, or health care? You think Walmart's going to have what they need? No, it doesn't even have what you need. Now, layer in the federal government's silent relocation program. Thousands of migrants are being flown or bused, at night, into cities and towns that have no infrastructure, no warning, and no say in the matter. Local law enforcement is overwhelmed. Emergency services are strained, and you, the taxpayer, are footing the bill. But more than that, you're the one standing in line at Walmart behind 30 people who just arrived with nothing. When SNAP collapses, when diesel runs dry, and when the dollar crashes, do you think those people will just go hungry quietly? No, they'll go looking for food, and you'll be the one who has it. 2. The digital kill switch that will shut off your access in seconds. This one's going to hit like a punch in the gut, because it's already quietly being tested, and you weren't even told. Over the past 24 months, the U.S. government, in partnership with major financial institutions and global tech companies, has rolled out the pilot stages of central bank digital currency infrastructure, aka CBDCs. That's not tinfoil hat stuff. That's from the Federal Reserve's own website. FedNow, the backbone of real-time payments, went live in 2023. By 2025, it's been adopted by over 300 banks and counting. But what does this have to do with Walmart? Everything. Because once cash is gone, and make no mistake, cash is dying fast. Your ability to buy food, fuel, or supplies depends entirely on whether your digital account is active, compliant, and approved. All it takes is a flag. Maybe you posted something controversial. Maybe your score dipped. Maybe you triggered a fraud alert by buying too much rice or ammo in a single trip. Suddenly, your card doesn't work. You're told it's temporary. You're told to wait 72 hours, but by the time that's over, there's nothing left to buy. And here's the kicker. Walmart is already laying the foundation. Self-checkout kiosks are being upgraded with facial recognition software. The company has invested millions into biometric tracking to reduce theft and streamline purchases. Sounds convenient, right? Until you realize that under a CBDC framework, your identity is tied to your spending permissions. If you're not on the right list, you're locked out. No groceries, no water, no medicine. This is already happening in parts of China, Nigeria, and Brazil. And now it's knocking on America's door. When the next crisis hits, be it a cyber attack, civil unrest, or natural disaster, the kill switch will be flipped. They won't need to come to your house. They'll just make sure you can't check out at Walmart, not even with a full cart, not even with your kids watching. And there won't be a manager who can override it, because that manager, he's locked out too. 1. The trigger date that will flip America overnight. They've already circled it. You just haven't seen the pen. Somewhere deep in the files of think tanks, defense contractors, treasury departments, and multinationals, there's a date. It's not the date when things start falling apart. It's the date when they stop pretending they can hold it together. And based on the patterns, the insider, memos, the financial calendars, and the staggering convergence of crises, it's coming sooner than you think. Let's connect the dots. The U.S. government hits its next major debt interest spike in Q2 of 2026, when over $9 trillion in Treasury bonds will have to be refinanced at higher rates, triggering a potential $1.4 trillion annual interest burden per Congressional Budget Office projections. That alone is enough to cause a catastrophic downgrade in U.S. credit, which will send inflation skyrocketing, the dollar plunging, and global confidence evaporating overnight. Now layer in the fact that Social Security's trust fund depletion date is accelerating. It's now projected to be fully exhausted by 2032, which means cuts to benefits could begin as early as 2026 to stabilize the outflow. That's 65 million Americans, mostly elderly and disabled, suddenly pulling back spending, rationing food, and flooding grocery stores every time a check gets reduced. But here's where it gets surgical. The Department of Defense has already issued public documents acknowledging the threat of near-peer conflict with China by 2027. And guess what? Conflict doesn't start with aircraft carriers. It starts with supply chains, trade halts, raw material shortages, digital interference. That's why Walmart's overseas contracts are being reevaluated in Q1 of 2026, exactly when U.S. military analysts predict increased geopolitical instability in Taiwan and the South China Sea. Translation: the stores are about to lose access to the same imports that stock 60% of their inventory. And now, for the final piece, the federal freeze on emergency pandemic-era food assistance fully ends in March 2026, with no renewal in sight. That means 23 million American households will see food budgets slashed by up to 30%, according to the USDA's own reports. That's not a budget tweak, that's a flashpoint. Combine it with the Fed's digital currency expansion set to scale nationally by mid-2026 and a presidential election that's already promising to be the most contested in modern history, and you've got a perfect convergence of civil, financial, and food system fragility. So what's the date? It's not published, but the machine doesn't need to tell you. The calendar's already screaming. Late March to early April 2026. That's when multiple systems break simultaneously. That's when benefits cut, imports slow, bond interest explodes, and public faith in the grocery system evaporates. That's when Walmart becomes the first battlefield. And here's the terrifying truth. The minute the shelves go bare, you're no longer a shopper. You're a target. Because everything we've talked about, diesel, farming, theft, digital lockdowns, economic warfare, all of it leads to one simple, horrifying conclusion. You're not supposed to be prepared. You're supposed to panic. Unless you've already started stockpiling. Unless you've got what they don't. Because when the countdown hits zero, the ones who took action will be eating in silence, while the rest of the country starts breaking windows for dinner.